Hi, my name is Aubrey Groff, and my topic for the Family Advocacy Project is the impacts of natural disasters on children and families. So, this problem is a family issue. Natural disasters impact families in a lot of ways, impact children in a lot of ways. So, in 2015, Thompson wrote an article about protecting children in disasters, and she stated that the needs of children in disasters are reliance on caregivers. Children must rely on caregivers to support them and care for them in this time because they can't do that for themselves. They also need communication and identification, mobility. They have physical needs, nutritional needs, emotional needs, developmental needs, as well as they need routine and comfort in this time because it is a really hard thing for them to be going through. And having someone that's going to give them comfort is going to promote attachment for them, and routine is going to just help them remain or help them receive a sense of normalcy. So an emotional fact about children and natural disasters is that children who have experienced trauma from a natural disaster are 5 times more likely to suffer serious emotional problems than those not affected by a disaster. So that's a really interesting fact because they can struggle with things like PTSD, depression, even anxiety. It's 5 times more likely that they're going to suffer from that on into the rest of their life. So the problem is there's a lot of effects on children and families. So what happens to children and families? So young children are vulnerable to the effects of disasters because they only know how to view responses of the parent. So they kind of reflect what their parent responds. And if their parent isn't responding in a healthy way or coping in a healthy way, that isn't going to help them be able to cope in a healthy way. Adolescents are at risk for high-risk behaviors, drug use, alcohol use, and just any other negative influences that the disaster would have. Young children get confused by the disaster. It might cause anxious feelings, like I said. Could be numbness, lack of response, withdrawal. There are physiological effects, psychological effects, negative impact on the child's development, and like I said, an increased risk of PTSD and depression. A lot of times children are moved in and out of schools after natural disasters occur because the school might have to have work done on it, or they might be moving, living with family members or things like that. So a lot of times they're in and out of schools quite rapidly, which can put them behind developmentally and educationally. And then there's a separation from the community. Having a united community in these times of natural disasters are really important and help the coping of the families and children, and it just provides them hope and they can relate to the other people because they're going through the same thing. There's also a lot of economic difficulties due to job losses and things like that. And then children just lack the necessary coping abilities to deal with large natural disasters. And it's also a very chaotic atmosphere, and that can be hard for them to feel comfortable in. So the help in these disasters come from government. So there's the FEMA budget, the Federal Emergency Management Agency that is given a budget, and then the Disaster Relief Fund. So when a large natural disaster occurs, the government can, the president can give help to those certain cities whenever they speak to the governor and if it's declared a disaster and things like that. So advocating for that money being used in the right places is really important. And then there's also a humanity organizations such as the American Red Cross and UNICEF that help support and provide relief efforts whenever those events happen. So my target audience for my project in my event is college students through a focus group. So the purpose of this group is to discuss the impacts that natural disasters have on children and families, and then how college students can protect, support, and respond to those natural disasters. So my approach in sharing this information is through social media, a Facebook event and Facebook group, and this method is good because there's high rates of college students on those social media sites. And then I can also hang flyers around campus. Flyers are seen by really thousands, hundreds, thousands of eyes every day. Whether they read them or not, some people do, and that is a good way to communicate information. and then word of mouth and texting in addition to those. So the goals and objectives of my program is that participants will be able to explain the effects of natural disasters on children and families. They will be able to state ways to protect, support, and respond to natural disasters when relating to families. Participants will be able to know how to support children in natural disasters, as well as being able to execute their own advocacy effort to raise money, to donate for a natural disaster, and to get other people involved. So the message of my program is how to support children and families in disasters. So ways to do this are stated on my PowerPoint. Again, in Thompson's article, she stated things about how to establish safety and control and how that's an important way to support children and families, and then helping them set up routines, normalizing and validating their emotions. The events that they have gone through are very challenging, and it's okay for them to be feeling the ways that they're feeling, and they need to know that. And then moving towards positive action, learning from the disaster, and encouraging creativity. In addition to this, it's important to not let disasters go unnoticed. Oftentimes that's what's happening, and I'm seeing that happen on college campuses. Things just aren't made a big deal of because they're not affecting the college students' lives directly, and that's why my focus group is college students, because I want them to be able to understand the importance of supporting and helping these children and families that are experiencing these natural disasters. So this can be through donations and volunteering, disaster preparedness, and then just supporting those government and local funds to go towards natural disasters. So partnering with the American Red Cross and Salvation Army, as well as other large organizations that provide relief efforts, is important. For my project, I am partnering with the Sigma Kappa sorority. It's a sorority that I'm in on campus, to communicate to members of the sorority about the importance of understanding the impacts that these disasters have on children and families, as well as raising money through some different little fundraisers that we do. And then there's also GoFundMe's and other websites that are used for direct donations to certain families or people or groups. My event, we did a few different things. I was able to do the event with some women in my sorority. It was just a small focus group that we did. And I started by having them brainstorm what they think the effects of natural disasters are on children and families, just to get their minds going. I gave them some time to do that, and then I gave them the research that I found on the effects in the CULP textbook. And so then I had the group come up with ways to protect families and help families prepare for disasters. And we wrote all the answers down on one board together. And then I followed that up by writing the additional ones that I had found through my research. And we just discussed why these things are important and why they often go unnoticed. In addition to that, we talked about different resources and organizations that help with relief efforts. There's organizations that help with unemployment services after people lose their jobs, different schools, after school programs, things like that. I had them get into groups where I gave them scenarios, and the groups were assigned a natural disaster scenario, and they had to come up with how they would respond to that scenario, which was an interesting thing for them to process and think through and just kind of get creative with ideas of how to help those people. And then I gave them the example of the Hurricane Katrina advocacy efforts that was in the CULP textbook. It was a really good resource to see just a different list of all of the things that that were done to advocate for children and families really directly after a huge natural disaster in our country. And then lastly, I had the individuals come up with a plan, their own plan to advocate for this same topic on campus. So they came up with ideas like doing a bake sale to raise money for Hurricane Irma victims, all sorts of things. Going to fraternity and sorority meetings was an idea they came up with to speak about it, speaking to Cliff Smart and other faculty administration, and then also holding events on campus to raise money, different competitions or other things like that. So the result of this event was really successful. The participants really did enjoy themselves, and they felt motivated and encouraged to share what they learned with other people and to raise money and donate money to the people that are going through these disasters, to the children and families that are impacted every day directly. So through this, I would just like to encourage more groups in the future, get other campus organizations involved, and just support children and families through this project. Thank you.